Hi, Mr. Giamatti. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very good. I appreciate you giving me time today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Let me tell you, I love this movie.
Great, thank you.
Primarily, I love this movie because it's not a movie I've ever seen before. You know, so many movies are variations on movies that you've already seen, and this is completely original.
Excellent.
And I'm wondering, was that part of the appeal of it to you?
Sure. I mean, I feel like Don Coscarelli's movies, pretty much all of them are pretty original. I mean, he's got a very, very unique way of going about things and a unique tone and sort of vision, and he just follows it through. And I feel like all of his movies are not like anything else I've ever seen. So that was a huge part of the appeal and made me very eager to be a part of making this. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had actually first met with him for Baba Nosferatu, was it?
Yes. Yes, I had.
And you know, you can admire a person's work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the two of you will gel creatively. So what is it that makes that possible for you two?
I think we have a similar sense of humor to some extent. I don't know. I mean, there's just something very, and I appreciated when I actually worked with him. I appreciated the way I knew he was going to be like this, and he's incredibly efficient and in control and gets the job done. And I really like that kind of thing. And he's that kind of guy. And so there was that. And then I just think that there's some similar sensibility in certain ways. It overlaps. I don't know. And it's just, I mean, it's not just that we were lucky that we got along together. It's just that to get the opportunity, you see these things you admire, and 90% of the time you don't ever meet the person who made it or whatever. And so it was just great to be able to get the opportunity to do it with him.
Yeah. And I'm curious from an acting standpoint, if it's more difficult to play the reality of a scene when the reality of the movie is so outlandish.
No, I think part of the pleasure is that it's so outlandish, and it can be real, and you can go there. I mean, I enjoy outlandish things. I always have. When I acted on stage, I always liked doing oddball, out there things too. I like it when it's unreal, just as much as it's fantastic to play the real circumstances of something. It's the fun of it is doing something completely bizarre and absurd. That's really pleasurable to me. You don't get to do it a whole lot, and so I find that more exciting than not.
And you've really got to, I don't know how to put this delicately, but you have to not be afraid to feel like a fool, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, in general, to be an actor, you have to not be afraid to look like a fool, because, you're potentially going to look like a fool doing most anything. But you definitely, with this stuff, even more so. And again, part of the pleasure, you're absolutely right. You're going to look like a fool. It's foolish and fun. That's part of the idea. So, you definitely can't have any qualms about that. But I feel like if you have any qualms about that, you shouldn't be an actor, because you're going to look like a fool at some point, no matter what.
Yeah. I can't imagine reading this script for the first time and thinking to yourself, how in the world is he going to realize all of this madness?
The really bizarre thing is that we had been talking about doing this Baba Nosferatu movie, which was in its own way complicated, but nowhere near as complicated as this was. And when the money for that fell through and he put it aside, he gave me this script, and I read it, and he said, yeah, this will be actually easier to do. And I remember just thinking, well, how the hell could this possibly be easy to do? I was like, how the hell are you going to do the dog driving the car? Any of this. How are you going to do the meat? All of it was just, it seemed so audacious, so unbelievably ambitious. But he was really confident that he knew exactly how this was not going to be easy to do. And it wasn't easy to do, but I was amazed at how much, yes, it proved to be that he knew exactly how he was going to get the meat monster made, and he knew exactly how he was going to do Korok and things like that. And it was amazing. It's amazing. Wow. It's a hugely ambitious movie. It's a movie that should cost bazillions of dollars, actually, but it didn't.
I feel the same way when I saw it. And speaking of seeing it for the first time, what was your reaction? Did you see it for the first time at Sundance or earlier?
Yeah. I'd seen it along the way. When I would be out in LA, sometimes I would always stop by and see him, and he would show me stuff cut together. And I don't think I ever saw the whole thing cut together where he was editing it. But so I was familiar enough with it, but I had not seen it screened like that, all done, everything done like that. And it was great. I've almost never been so pleased about something I've been a part of, to see that it came together like that. I mean, it's heroic that this thing got pulled off the way it did. It really is it's just fantastic. I'm incredibly pleased it came off the way it did.
Yeah, and it's the kind of movie that, hardcore fans and geeks like me are going to definitely gravitate towards. And I feel the same way about American Splendor, which happened closer to the beginning of your career. Do you feel that kind of presence when you make a movie that taps into a fan base?
Yeah, sometimes you can feel that, and it's a really nice thing. Totally, and that's a good. American Splendor had that feeling to it too, that you were really appealing to to people who genuinely, deeply love this stuff, and you want to do a good job for those people too, and you don't want to disappoint them. So it really keeps you honest about it in a nice way. But it is a very nice thing to do. Yes, actually, yes.
Yeah. And you've had, obviously, you've been in massive movies, you've been in independent movies, including, I have to tell you, one of my all-time favorite movies is actually Barney's version.
Oh, thanks. Glad you like that.
Incredibly moving to me.
Thank you.
Is there a freedom that you're afforded in independent films like John Dies at the End that might be missing from the big studios?
It depends, it's all yes, certainly the higher the money level goes up, the anxieties become different. The lower it is, it's just a question of logistics. You can't get everything done you'd like to get done, but there often is much greater freedom. The reason you don't have any money is because the movie's weird and you're going to have fun. And as it goes up, it can be less fun and you can feel less freedom, but that also depends on the guy making the movie. I always think that you can do tiny little movies and they can feel not fun, and you can do a big, huge thing. I always think of Planet of the Apes that I did, which was a gigantic movie. Just giant. But Tim Burton did not make it feel like it was a giant movie. You felt like you were making John Dies at the End in a funny way. Even though the studio was putting a lot of shackles on everybody, him and everybody else, the face-to-face dealing with that man was so much fun. He was such a fun guy to be around, and he was having such a good time. His pleasure was in standing there with the actors and coming up with weird stuff. So suddenly it felt like a small movie you were doing with this wonderful man, and he made a difference. So it's all just a case-by-case thing.
Yeah. Well, I had, like a lot of people, you first garnered my attention probably 15 years or so ago when you played a pig vomit.
Yeah. Well, that was another example of a movie that woman remains one of my favorite directors I ever worked with. That was so much fun doing that movie. She only cared about the actors, and she was so much fun. It was great.
Well, and this is the last question because I know you're pressed for time, but you several years later you kind of hit your stride with Sideways, and your career went off in an exciting new direction. But you've been acting a long time. Does it mean something different to you today, the pleasure you get from it, than it did at the beginning of your career?
Yes. In some ways, you kind of want to come back and recapture some of the pleasure of what it was like at the beginning of your career. That's what you start to realize again. And in some ways, yes, it just, like I say, having a good day at work with good people becomes its own reward in a way, to be able to just have the simple pleasure of working with people that you're enjoying. Yeah, it means a lot to be able to have that kind of thing happen over time. Yeah.
Well, let me
that answers your question. I think
that absolutely does. I think I only had 10 minutes with you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Sorry, man.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love what you do, so thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All righty, sir. Bye-bye.